There's a few news stories. There was a discussion of how to detect spyware on your phone, and there was an article saying business leaders are now getting hacked the way politically sensitive people like whistleblowers and journalists have been getting hacked with Pegasus spyware, which is the expensive stuff that's supposed to only be available. It's from the NSO group in Israel, and it's supposed to only be available for legitimate law enforcement agencies, but it's become pretty obvious that they do in fact sell it to a lot of people and do not really limit who uses it like they should. So they said this iVerify tool was able to find it on a phone, so I looked and there's another tool. I didn't know there were any security products for the iPhone. Last I looked, there were not. But there are some kind of anti-malware products you can put on an iPhone. And that's news to me, and I am not sure what they could do because apps don't have access to the whole file system on an iPhone unless you jailbreak it. So anyway, I'm going to look into this and see if any of them are any good. If any of them can actually detect Pegasus, that would be good. This one says there are two tools, Certo and iVerify, and they tested it on 3 kinds of malware. Of course, it is their company testing it, so they're not an independent observer, but still, they claim they found 3 threats. They didn't test Pegasus because you can't get Pegasus unless you're a law enforcement agency, and it's probably not the major threat for most of us. But here's other ones: a hidden spy app, a keylogger, and another web watcher, some other kind of malware, and of course for all of them their product works and the other product doesn't. So anyway, I'm interested in that, and I'm going to look into it and see if there's actually anti-malware products we should be running on iPhones, and how powerful they are, and so on. So, as you know, the president pardoned his son and explained that it was a political prosecution and the justice system was corrupt and he was unfairly prosecuted, which is a pretty strange thing to say under his administration, and completely buys into Trump's narrative and completely contradicts all of his promises. So I'm not very happy with it, and neither is our governor. Our governor is one of the very few prominent Democrats that dare to criticize Biden, which is, the whole thing shows the Democratic Party being very much like the Republican Party. They're supposed to be very different. They're supposed to be not dominated by a leader. They're supposed to be holding up the rule of law and such. And what Biden originally said, which I think is the right answer, is he's not going to pardon his son. He's going to let him go to court and then get a good lawyer and try to win with the court system. And that's not what he did, though. And so it, I think, greatly degrades the Democratic Party's position as being the high moral ground and the resistance against Trump, and strongly strengthens Trump's argument that everybody is just corrupt, they're all equally corrupt, and you might as well take me because you'll probably make more money.
I'm kind of surprised it took him this long to get around to it.
Well, one other criticism I heard from Democratic strategists is that if he was going to do it, there are well-known ways to do unpopular things. You wait until your last day in office, or you wait until like Friday night at midnight or something. And they said doing it this way creates the maximum amount of bad press for the Democrats for no good reason. But apparently he did it because his son's sentencing is coming up. But he actually did it really kind of early, before his sentencing came up. And typically you let people go to jail and then you pardon them. And he also gave him a blanket pardon for anything he did, even things he hasn't been accused of yet, for an 11-year period. And there's never been a pardon that sweeping.
How reassuring.
I know all this really tarnishes the idea that Democrats are like the upright good guys, obeying the rules, standing for our laws and everything, and the Republicans are those nasty people that are cheating. It kind of makes it look like they're both just in it for themselves. And the point is, and one of the other Democrats said recently, well, what about all the other working class Americans who were also unfairly prosecuted and in prison? Why don't you pardon them? And that's the point. Anyway, it's our governor is one of the very few that dare to publicly say Biden shouldn't have done this. All the rest of the Democrats just immediately fall behind him and say, oh yes, it's wonderful that he did this. Oh yes, and last month I said it's wonderful he said he wouldn't do this. Yes, I just say yes to whatever he says. So anyway, and Microsoft, in a similar thing, has now said they're absolutely not going to lower the requirements for Windows 11 so you can put it on your Windows 10 PC. The TPM2 is the main hardware component that you don't have on a typical Windows 10 PC, and that's why everybody has to buy new hardware to get Windows 11, and Microsoft says, we will not relent. However, they do mention at the end the fact, which is there are hacks that will put it on an old machine and it runs just fine. All you have to do is execute change some registry keys and stuff. Microsoft does keep closing them, but there's a series of more that keep coming out. You can override that and put it on the old hardware and it runs just fine. So Microsoft is just lying when they say you need the new hardware to make it run. They've done this before. They did it with Vista. I don't know why they do this. Microsoft, that's why I was really surprised when Microsoft did a good job with AI, because this is what Microsoft has always been like, self-defeating, stubborn, stupid ideas. Like, this doesn't accomplish anything for them. They don't sell the hardware. They don't have any reason to sell more hardware. And they did the same thing with Vista. They made it have strange requirements, so you had to buy a new machine to get the glorious new features in Vista, which were zero. There was nothing in Vista that wasn't in XP that anybody wanted. And there's nothing in Windows 11 that isn't in Windows 10 that anybody wants. So Microsoft suffers from some kind of incestuous thing where they internally tell each other it's great and convince themselves that everybody wants the new thing, when in fact it's not true, because they have a sort of closed society of people that believe sort of lies. This tends to happen to big companies. IBM used to do this. They had a company hymnal full of songs about IBM and special company socks you would wear. You would go to the retreat. It was like a church service where you would chant praises of IBM and, you know, sort of like being in a cult. And Microsoft is like that. They don't connect to reality. They just believe a bunch of internal myths. Which is why if you want to get a job at Microsoft, you have to learn to speak their lingo. Just like if you get involved in a fundamentalist Protestant Christian church, you have to learn to use the terms they use. So anyway, so the FBI, this is a really surprising thing. The telephone company hack is getting way out of hand. I heard about this, happened in October. Our telcos got hacked, and China got the pen register data showing who'd been calling who, and I thought it was over, but it isn't over at all. It keeps getting worse and worse. I got another one about it. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe I don't. Yeah, the interesting thing here is, so they've gotten so bad, they say they haven't ejected the intruders that are stealing the data yet, and they don't know when that's going to happen, and it's been more than a month. So they're really deeply penetrated. They don't seem to have any idea what to do about it. And the FBI is now telling people to use encrypted messaging, which is just what they have never wanted anybody using, because they wanted a backdoor. But the thing I saw in one of these articles that really floored me is something I've been saying in class for years appears to be false. We have a law called CALEA in America, which means that telephone providers must have wiretap facilities so the police can wiretap your communications with a court order. And I've heard many, many attempts for the FBI to have CALEA for the internet, but it never passed. But apparently it did pass in 2008. The EFF held it back a couple of years with lawsuits, but those are apparently rejected. So according to this, since 2008, the cops can have a court order to wiretap your internet traffic. And every internet service provider must provide that. Now, I have not heard about this. I didn't hear about that hashing, and I haven't heard about court cases where that kind of evidence was used. I'm very surprised by this, because the last I heard, this was not happening. But apparently this did happen in America almost 20 years ago. And so unless there's more to the story, apparently all your internet communication can be wiretapped in America. But there's a lot of good reasons why you wouldn't want to do this. One of the many reasons being, I think it makes it completely illegal for European companies to use the American internet, because they don't have the privacy protections that European law requires them to have over here. So I wonder if something is still limiting this. Anyway, it's a surprise to me. All right, and I think this one I thought was very interesting. There's one of the workers that worked at Google. When Google started training AI and going to photos, he decided to quit the company and quit using Google Photos, whatever Google's photo service is. There you can put photos in the cloud, because he says they will learn from your AI. And he said, so now what he does in order to convince people to pay more attention to the privacy of their photos is he's made a website where you can upload a photo and it will run an AI and tell you what it can deduce from the photo. He said people think it can't learn much from a photo, but it totally can. He put up a picture of him and his family standing in front of a restaurant, and it explained who they were, where they were. It even looked at the watches they were wearing and figured out what model the watch was, and said this watch model is common among terrorists. And that was the information that the AI deduced from the photo. He said that's exactly why you should be afraid. It will find a lot of details, and it will make stupid additional stuff out of it. So he made a website. They see your photos, where you can upload a photo and then see what the AI can figure out from the photo, and he says it's much more than you think. So anyway, that's an interesting demonstration of AI security. Anyway, I think that's enough of the news. Let me stop this.